let's go ahead and kick off the intro and get this party rolling. All right, so we're back. We're back with Mr. J. Got all the sharing done. So before we went into the intro, we were talking about the coronavirus. I don't know. Maybe we're not even supposed to say that anymore.
We're always talking about the coronavirus lately.
Yeah, I think we're still small enough that we slide under the radar with most stuff, which is good. But anyways, I've had it. I was confirmed to had it. Got kicked out of work for it. Thankfully for me, it wasn't terrible for me. It wasn't a horrible thing. But it has been pretty brutal to other people. I don't even think there's anyone knows why it affects certain people differently, or it could be what your vitamin D, vitamin C levels. I don't know what it is, the temperature, whether it was in your body for a certain amount of time, where it traveled in your body. I don't know. Mine felt like body aches for about half a day.
What blood type are you, Jared?
I am A negative.
You're A negative. Okay. Now I heard it treats the O's pretty good, and I heard it was devastating to the A's. So there's more contraindicating information right there for me.
Maybe. You never know. I mean, there's such a myriad of different ways it can affect, whether it gets down into your lungs, whether it just hangs out in your nasal passages for a short period of time, and then your body stops it from propagating too far from there. Who knows? Who knows what could change it? But so Mr. J here is being good and proper in his home with his mask on and his sunglasses, and this is his disguise because he has a story for us. And why don't you just kick it off and tell us what happened, how it went down?
Sure. So after the election, it was I've been in politics here for over 15 years. Hearing about poll watchers not being able to actually view the ballots is considered highly irregular. Every time I've been a poll watcher, every time that I've ever heard from old timers or people before me or after me, poll watchers were always allowed from both parties to watch the ballots.
Okay.
I was a poll watcher actually for the Democratic Party.
Okay, so you were a Democrat that watched the polls?
Yes.
Okay.
This was years ago. I was a poll watcher for the Democrat Party.
Okay.
So after hearing about all of this go down in several different places, when I heard that there was a rally in D.C. to support Trump, I decided to head down there and lend my voice. So it was a last-minute decision, and as you can imagine, every hotel was booked inside of D.C. I mean, there was nothing to find. So we went the Airbnb route. That was no problem. We were going to stay outside of Washington, D.C. in a little Virginia town. We were going to take an Uber in and participate in the protest.
Uh-huh.
So the reason why I brought up the poll watching and that is because that's really what motivated me to take part in this. I know that there's a lot of back and forth about there's no election fraud, there is election fraud. For me, I'm just a patriot and I'm a little guy, so I'm never going to know what the actual truth is. But from my own firsthand experiences, when poll watchers are not there to do their job and secure an election, that election cannot ever be validated. Okay, that's why we have them. That's why it's in the Constitution. And that's why every state in the Republic allows that to happen.
Yeah,
so this is what motivated me to go to my first rally ever.
And this was an interesting year with the mail-in voting, with the
right.
You know,
Even with a mail-in vote, we've always had mail-in voting.
yeah,
The
but not.
procedure for a mail-in vote would be that the envelope would be on the table, and a person from the Democratic Party and the Republican Party would be there and view it as it was opened, as the ballot was taken out. We would verify that the signatures matched, and we would verify that the information was correct.
So you guys would
If it was
work
not
as
correct,
as a team. Is that how it worked? One guy'd open the envelope.
no, we would monitor the actual election workers doing their work. However, we have the power to say we disagree, and then that's put aside, and then there's another kind of process to go through whether that ballot is invalidated altogether. But I've never heard of ever a place not allowing poll watchers to actually watch and do their job.
And didn't that happen? I guess in was it Michigan and Detroit?
It's happened in Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Georgia, all these battleground states
And
that
they
are
used
so
it.
razor thin.
They went under
Have
the
not
guise
allowed
of COVID. You have to stand way over there, right?
Well, here's the thing about that, though. If you wear a mask, you're supposed to be protected. You cannot stand 6 feet away from a ballot and with any confidence secure that ballot and verify that it was real.
And
So-
you know, there's other ways they could have gone about this. They could have built just a plexiglass barrier that the poll watchers stood right there on the other side of. They could have built, you know, like a.
That's correct. There was really no from my investigation and from talking to friends in Pennsylvania who are in the political scene and who are also fellow poll watchers. Nothing was made to help them. In fact, if COVID was such a concern, I would argue that how they treated the poll watchers was more dangerous than spreading them out.
How did they treat them?
They corralled them behind, steel barriers,
Uh-huh.
and they were all kind of meshed, stuck in there together.
So
you know,
they
shoulder
gathered
to shoulder.
they gathered the poll watchers in a little herd.
Right. So while everything else was social distances, the poll watchers were not. This also happened in the state that I'm in as well. You were pretty much watching the envelopes being opened from anywhere between 30 and 50 feet away while you were stuck in a corral, and everyone else that was actually doing the work was 6 feet apart in tables that were 6 feet apart. So this is what really motivated me to
And they
spend my
couldn't have.
time.
I mean, Vegas has cameras on every table. They couldn't have set something up like that. The poll watchers could have been sitting at home verifying this, and they could have had a
That's a very good
CCTV
point.
system.
There's no reason other than fraud that none of this was set up in any sort of logical fashion.
Well, I'll tell you my feelings. Here's my feelings about it. Was set up because our government is only good at one thing. Any government is only good at one thing, and that's it: failure, turning gold into shit. That's what governments do. So they drop the ball all along the line, and I think in certain areas, let's go with it. I'll do the neutral stance on this. If this happened, it was something that was taken advantage of on the ground. I don't think it was a planned thing from the start. Now, granted, I think maybe there were some people in either party that thought we can use this to our advantage, but I think they didn't put any pre-planning into it. I would like to see the numbers shake out on how much this election cost us.
Let me ask you this: Are these ballots? Are they put through a machine? Because we have to fill in the bubble, and we can't go out of the lines, and it has to be a certain color. So I'm assuming, okay, a person might open it up, but don't they run these ballots through a machine?
If you're speaking about regular ballots, those go through a machine. However, they're also verified by poll watchers to make sure that the signatures match up, the person's address is correct, all their information is right, and they're a registered voter. Typically, you're not going to even get a ballot until you provide them information to prove that you are, in fact, who you are and that you are a registered voter. So there's that. that's already kind of established as a way to prevent election fraud. And that's how we've done things for dozens and dozens of years, and that's always worked. The problem with the mail in ballots and with COVID is it was a perfect storm for cheating. It allowed people to circumnavigate any oversight. And we know, just based on past human experiences, when people do not have oversight, especially an election where there's very strong personal feelings about one side or the other, people tend to usually pop off at that point and start taking things into their own hands. They start to do things for their party and not their country. And this is why we're where we are right now, where half the people in America do not believe that the election was actually free and fair. It's also incumbent upon the winners of the election to prove to the people that lost the election that it was free and fair, to get everyone on board with our republic and move on. So the fact that either side is against having poll watchers and verifying a free and fair election to certify that they're winner, not to the winning side, because they're going to actually believe their side, but it's for the losing side, right? You have to get those people on board to make sure that you have a republic.
Yeah, we're talking 73 million people. That
Actually,
is,
it could be as high as 84 million.
could be, but let's go with the official count. 73 million. Would you want that number to be to feel like to lose faith in the policy?
So that kind of leads me back to what made me decide to go to the rally, is because of disenfranchisement. Another thing was censorship. Conservative ideals or conservative voices, or voices that go against any of the left right now, are being just absolutely stomped by big corporations, by big tech, even by government. So one of the reasons that I wanted to go down there and lend my voice to that is because censorship is wrong. This is America. If we can't disagree, robustly, but still come together at the end of the day, then we fundamentally change the fabric of our country. And the fabric of our country is being torn in half right now by people who simply do not want to listen to the other side. And now that they have perceived power, they're absolutely crushing any dissent. And that is a problem. If you are going to lose your livelihood, if you're going to lose your standing in society because you're doxxed, because people are going to come out against you just for an opinion that you have, you could still be the best person on the planet. You could be friends with people left, right, center, it doesn't matter. But for some reason, we have set up an environment where radicals are not allowing any discourse whatsoever. And this only seems to be gaining momentum.
Yeah,
So on
that
my way down to the rally, we had booked the day before with Airbnb. That was the only game in town. We booked late, so all the hotels were booked up. So we scheduled with Airbnb. Foolishly, I put down on the Airbnb application, like everyone else, I'm an honest person. So I said, hey, I'm going to the Trump rally, blah, blah, blah. I've used Airbnb hundreds and hundreds of times before. Okay, so I have a great rating. We actually headed down that morning early to go to Washington. And around 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, we received an email that let us know that our Airbnb has been canceled because they do not support hate speech. And I was floored. So I called, and that's the official line. So I called to complain, and I have been banned from Airbnb altogether.
so hate speech. Now, me and Dave jived on this a little bit because since I looked up the Airbnb terms of service, and I will go ahead and pop those up on the screen right now. So this is kind of their terms of service rules: act with integrity, be polite, humana, don't hack or any of that stuff.
Well, at least we know where Airbnb stands on their political beliefs. I think they should have to justify the fact that what you were doing was hate speech. But because I don't consider someone who says I'm and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. J, but you said I'm attending the Trump rally. You didn't say damn those communists or something like that.
I just gave the simple reason for wanting the room.
Mm-hmm.
I just said, me and my companion were going to be attending the Trump rally, and that was that. Why it was labeled as hate speech, I don't know, but I see a trend of censorship all through big tech and corporate America. I've talked to other people who have been banned by Airbnb for the same reasons. They've banned thousands of people for that reason. So I guess for me, it was a real slap in the face and a wake-up call that, if we don't hold the line or make our voices heard with any sort of relevance, we may lose our voices. Big tech, corporates, corporate entities, they're all kind of aligning here in lockstep. And that's going to crush anyone who does not agree with them. And it's going to create an echo chamber that unfortunately will exclude half of the country.
Well,
now this isn't just for Republicans.
It won't exclude them; it'll silence them.
Well, I mean, I guess it could be argued that silence is exclusion, right? Because you're not going to want to take part in things. You're not going to want to be part of a political process that you're disenfranchised with. You're not going to want to be part of a society that openly doesn't like you just because of your beliefs. It is a form of discrimination, and it's also just tyranny.
Yes, that's a fact. It's techno tyranny.
Yeah, but it is Airbnb's platform, and if they were to say something like, if you're a Trump supporter, we don't want you on our platform, blah blah blah. That's my perspective. They can do what they want with their platform, but usually if you put your neck out there in that form, you're gonna get it chopped off. I mean, you can't put your balls on the chopping block and expect society not to lower the axe if you're going to exclude half of them. And I'm going to say at least half of America likes Trump. So are there other platforms we can use for Airbnb type arrangements, or do we just like an abused relationship keep going back? I guess, I don't know, maybe it's kind of on the population's shoulders what to do in this situation, not the legal systems.
What are does Airbnb have any competitors in their market?
I believe they do. They probably have a couple, but I don't think any of them are as big as Airbnb.
I'm just wondering, do they have any competitors? Because if they do, then if something like this, unnerves you, well, now might be the time to swap accounts, to make sure you no longer book with or affiliate with Airbnb and go with,
I mean, Airbnb has tons of competitors. They're called hotel chains.
Yeah, but is there another online,
Yes, there are. There are others. There's a few.
Well,
I can't think of them off the top of my head, but they are out there.
I think that the spirit of that is an American spirit, but I think also that it really misses the point that this is a very slippery slope. What happens when you need gas and gas stations decided that they don't like conservatives? What happens when grocery stores start to do that? What happens when Walmart starts to do that? It's a really slippery slope.
What happens when your bank does that?
Right, or your cell phone companies or your internet companies.
Because banks and financial outlets have done that, and they've done that recently. And Maybe it was to under some whatever circumstances to guys that people don't like, but they have done that. And how does that work out? Now, granted, some of those places, like is it Patreon? Patreon's looking at having a pretty heavy financial burden put on them for what they did to a couple of online people where they decided that what they did was hate speech, but
Like,
had some rough ways of, I guess, dealing with that with their patrons.
is there a way to define hate speech that can hold up in court? I mean, it seems like if I just don't like something, it's hate speech, right? That's what it seems to me in today's society.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if we're going to have this government needs to step in and say, okay, businesses, you cannot do any unilateral action unless there is, this is how I'd make it so that if you want to say that he's banned from Airbnb for hate speech, there has to be a trial saying that he committed hate speech.
So that's not necessarily how it works. The First Amendment gives us the freedom to speech and the freedom for religion and all sorts of other good things. But companies are not held to any of the amendments.
I know, and that's the rough thing. I'm an anarchist. I'm not a fan of governments at all. I think they overstep, they screw it up, they turn gold into shit. I don't think that this would be a good means to do it. But as long as the government's going to regulate a market to make it so that competitors can't rise, because let's say tomorrow if the three of us wanted to start an Airbnb website, what hoops would we have to jump through to start that? And what regulations have been put in to protect Airbnb right now that we would have to compete with? What would the battalion of lawyers have to look like that we would have to hire to make sure we meet all the regulatory costs and circumstances? Where Airbnb started when there wasn't that market, and maybe Airbnb, a lot like Facebook and all those other guys, have set up regulations around what they already have so that people who can't grow into those regulations is easy.
Well, I do agree with that, but I also see a disturbing trend that one party in the country seems to be rallying corporations to silence their opponents for them.
I know, it's shocking. The communists, the Democrat Party wants to act like they want a single party state. Shocking. It's confusing.
I actually think that they don't want that as an end state. I think they want it to be more like China light, where we have the perception of a government, we have the perception of capitalism, we spend zounds of money, but we are not free.
But it's a single party state, and that's what the Democrats want. They want a single party state. That's what all communist organizations want. They don't want any other views but their view to be entered into the marketplace of ideas.
And that's my concern. We are being crushed. We are being, we're having our livelihoods threatened. It's insane that this is America today, because I never would have thought this would be what America was 20 years ago.
Yeah. Well, they adjudicated you on a difference of opinion. That's what they adjudicated you on.
Well, isn't that slander though? If I say you're a hate speaker,
you have the right to refuse service.
Well, you could go to court on libel. It costs you your trip. It costs you whatever it costs you.
I mean, here you are on the internet. Now everyone knows you're a hate speaker. Right?
You're amongst friends. You're okay.
So my 5-0 glasses.
There's got to be some sort of a repercussion for people when they say things on the marketplace that are not true. And there's no way that you can say someone's speaking hate because they're attending a Trump rally. Trump rallies are not about speaking hate, and it's a political candidate. There's no basis to hold yourself to. It's just blah 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 right out of their mouth because I want to, and that's really what it comes down to. And yeah, there should be some sort of responsibility. They got to hold themselves to that standard And you know, I guess in the fiat market system, why not a lawsuit?
I wonder how many people this happened to.
I've read online that there's been thousands of people that this happened to with complaints. Thousands of people are reporting that they got their plans canceled to go to that rally by Airbnb. And I just want to say too that in normal times, this would be a huge deal. But it really seems like our institutions and big business has been weaponized against half the country.
How much does Airbnb charge on their end for their services?
Not too much, I'll be honest.
I don't think they take much.
If maximum 5%.
5%?
Something like that.
There's 1,000 of you that get together, build a website. Maybe you can find a handful of lawyers and charge 4%.
Charge Bitcoin.
I mean, that could be, it really
ideally, right now, you go on Facebook and every 10th post is, I'm going to Parler, I'm going to Parler. So what is that? That's Facebook is starting to lose some of their market share for their decisions.
Well,
fuck it. Let's give Airbnb.
That's true, but it's also kind of a misnomer, right? Facebook has over 1.2 billion users.
They do.
If they even shed 200 million, they're still going to be Facebook.
They
doubled
are
their competition.
They are, but
sure they're insulated from takeovers.
Hell, Twitter was dying before Trump. What do you think Twitter's going to do once Trump's gone?
Is that true?
I actually think if they have the courage, which I don't think this will happen in a Biden administration, but if they have the courage to get rid of all legal protections and make them publishers instead of platforms,
there you go.
I think that eventually people will have the justice that they deserve.
What is that, 205 or whatever it is?
Section 230.
Section 230. Just get rid of that and just, actually enforce that and say, you decide. I think it was Net Zero was the only one that survived in the upstart of the internet because they went to all the different internet companies and all the other ones says, we try to control what's on our platform. They all got hammered and fined. Net Zero said, we don't do anything. We just provide the place. And for that, they weren't labeled as a publisher. They got no fines. Everyone else that called themselves a publisher got hit with fines. So you can be a platform or a publisher. I say it's time we enforce that,
Well, people have been saying it's time to enforce that for the longest time. Why hasn't it been enforced? That makes no sense to me. It seems like it would be the logical thing to do.
I know,
but
it's
it hasn't.
shocking under what was a split judicial system. It wasn't enforced. No one had the political will or clout to take that on. Not to mention, whoever does go up against that, I mean, you're treading into some pretty hairy waters where those guys have more reach than you have.
Unlimited resources.
Yeah. So the thing is what do you do then? Do we turn to them and say, all right, you want to play that game? You're now Mountain Bell, and we're going to break you into 1,000 pieces. Or, how do you deal with it? Your Standard Oil. Do we go against them with the Sherman Act?
I think in normal times, any of those things would be viable. However, I think in the times that we're going through now, when so many of our checks and balances have been weaponized for political purposes, one of the only lines in the sand might be violent rebellion and civil war.
Well, I'm afraid we're headed that way.
Because if we can't have a voice, if we can't use the political process, look, politics is war. You're not going to win every battle. You're not going to lose every battle.
It's bloodless war.
But when you have that feeling in the pit of your stomach that something is not right, okay, we're not stupid Americans, all right? We're not plebes. We're not automatons. We can see the writing on the wall when something is not fair and just, when something is not right, okay? Just like with Russia collusion, that pit in your stomach, when you know that you can't prove what you're feeling is not right, but it's not right. And this is how it was with this election. Okay, we are slowly going back to the globalist agenda, and they're going to sell America down the road, and they're going to make damn sure that no American ever has a voice again. And that is the line in the sand that we are at right now. Whether you're a fan of Donald Trump or just a fan of America, all right, this time in history, we will look back and we will see, I guarantee you, we will see, if we do nothing now to make our voices heard, we will lose our voices forever.
Yeah, I think right now, I think the best option is to start up stuff on the side. You've got that Patreon went to extremes and went social justicey and threw a whole bunch of people off. And Patreon's getting sued for it. And there's a little bit of inside baseball on the way they're getting sued, but they have to pay out individually for each different patron or whatever, each different person. So they're trying to figure that out. But because of that, you had that, what's that other Patreon-like thing, N-Star, or what was it? It's another Patreon-like system that rose to prominence because of that. And so all your conservatives says, this is where I now accept patrons. And so I think that's, right now, that's a steps that, as a populace, we need to take right now. Airbnb wants to play this game. Fine. You want to shut us out of the market, we will find your competitor and we will bolster them. We'll bolster them if they charge more. We'll bolster them regardless. If their owner looks like AIDS victim, warlock, whatever, we'll bolster them. And that's what we need to do. We need to that's something we can do right now, and we don't have to get the government involved. Because if the government gets involved, it never ends up good. I mean,
it's always a loss when the government gets involved. It's better to let free market decisions resolve free market issues.
Yeah, and then even after that, the government can get involved after that, but the government's never, I mean, name me one time the government got involved and cured a problem.
But here's the thing, the government really is already involved, Jared, because the point that you brought up earlier, if me, you, and Mr. J wanted to go start an Airbnb tomorrow, the government's involved.
What's the regulatory cost? What kind of battalion of lawyers do we need to get to slice through
an obstacle in our way?
Yeah,
that they
and
didn't have to deal with.
Speaking of social media, those regulations have been made to insulate them from competitors. This isn't just like a one-off thing.
And that's how it works. That's how it works. The media does that fuckery to get Ted Cruz up there screaming at that AIDS victim Gandalf, and then they write some laws, and AIDS victim Gandalf, is happy about it because what those laws do is insulate him from competitors. The same thing happened when Upton Sinclair wrote that goddamn book, The Jungle. The government stepped in, and next thing you know, competitors can't rise up to meet the regulatory costs.
I agree. So I've also, I started to get quite concerned with censorship. So I've done a bunch of research over the past week. And it seems like not only are people being deplatformed all over the place, but I think it's Breitbart, not Breitbart, the news conglomerate, but it's a platform that people use to organize events. They've deplatformed all events related to Trump and the election.
Shocker. Yeah.
Several other platforms have, like Town Hall got deplatformed. Several other conservative groups have been deplatformed. Patriots for America on YouTube, who had over 300,000 members, they got deplatformed by YouTube yesterday. They're no longer on there. So the censorship is going well beyond Airbnb and big tech. It seems to be picking up momentum against a certain viewpoint, and I think that I think that they're willing to take the hit in the short term because they know that control is going to be coming in the long term. So I think that it's a strategy to shore up a short term loss, especially with COVID. Now's the perfect time for them to write this off on their books. And then a year or two down the road, once things have normalized, they can really ramp up and continue along with their censorship
Yeah,
in a
they can
justified manner.
they can control. Well, I mean, let's look at what AOC put out. She says, "Let's make lists of people who supported Trump." You know, what's that?
A gentleman in California just put a post out today saying that Trump supporters should be put in concentration camps, and high-level Trump supporters should face something akin to the Nuremberg trials.
Yeah, yeah.
This is never
What would
before,
what would that trial look like? How many people did you order killed?
when you're in a banana republic, it's going to look like a banana republic trial.
Well, the issue is they're going to bring us to force of arms, and that's what's going to happen. And
I would argue that we're already there.
And if I was any of you guys, I would leave the cities. I would leave the states that are close to the oceans. You need to get to the interior where it'll be mostly quiet.
Yeah, but what would it really look like? A civil war between transgender Antifa members and people that actually exist and provide for society, or military members. Most military members, we do support Trump.
There's plenty of military members that support Antifa. Antifa should not be taken lightly.
No.
They're a national organization with command and control in every state. They
What
have
about
quick
the
reaction forces?
What about the John Brown Gun Club? I don't care how much estrogen you pump into your body. If you can squeeze that trigger, you're a deadly machine.
The difference is, as I see it too, is that with Antifa, it's an ideology.
Yeah, have you seen the way they work? They operate too. They're like hyenas. They peel someone off from the herd, they surround him, and then they nip at him when his back is turned. And then once they get him down, they've
been schooled in guerrilla warfare. That's standard guerrilla warfare tactics. They're a violent and dangerous organization, but to combat them, they're mostly located where they live, in these blue cities.
Well,
simply cordon off these blue cities.
They do travel, but they only travel to blue cities. They'll try to go to purple cities, but they get beat up every time they go there.
And they're not protected in those cities.
Yeah, and they're not protected by the legal system has been protecting them in New York and Portland and Seattle, and they've been protected there. They wouldn't be as well. They weren't protected out here in Utah. They were put on trial. One of the wasn't it a lawyer got charges for buying paint for them.
That was a state representative.
Oh yeah, a state representative got charges here in Utah.
If they are so reliant on these supply lines of assistance, I don't see. I mean, it wouldn't take much. I really think if there was a violent course of action, it might actually pay off in the long run. I mean, strategically looking at it.
I've talked about it. I'm nervous of Antifa, but I'm more afraid of the radical right that uprises under those circumstances.
And they're definitely conjuring them up. I mean, they are going to isolate people, and they're going to get angry, and then what? Like, everyone becomes Mr. J on Airbnb if they want to attend a Trump rally. And I'll tell you, once they start denying services to people that are capable of holding their own in society, and they provide services to those that seem quite incapable from my perspective. Yes, I'm referring to the Antifa children living in the basements. I think they're swinging their sword in the wrong direction, and it's gonna backfire on them. There's gonna be competition in the marketplace. It will eventually dethrone the current kings. Facebook. I don't know who's competing with Facebook right now, but there is Parler out there. I've even created us an account on Parler.
You can also check out Gab.com.
Gab.com. Yep.
That's
BitChute.
that's seen a huge increase in traffic, and I've actually been speaking with the creator of Gab.com. He's a very interesting fellow, very religious, but totally supports the Constitution and the First Amendment.
Yeah. Well, that's the important thing. Well, the scary thing, okay, what Antifa reminds me of is if you study the Bolsheviks and the Mensheviks circa, 1919, right after Lenin got a foothold. They were allowed to overthrow that system because they were going up against a half-ass, conjured up, dreamed up republic that had just come out of a feudalist system. They weren't going against free people.
I would disagree with you only because this is more reminiscent to me of the revolution in China that Mao set forth.
Oh, the Red Army.
You can see that with Antifa being the muscle, but also the social justice message that they're pushing that excludes free thought, logic, rationalism.
That's a good point. The Bolsheviks weren't as well, they got more restrictive as they went along, but initially they weren't as restrictive. But under Mao, that what was it, the Red Liberation Army?
Exactly, and when you start to add that social justice angle in there, where it divides family along ideological lines, with family turning in family, that's really what you're kind of going to start seeing here in the U.S. because people get so emotionally charged over the social justice issues. And it's packaged in such a way to make you think that if someone is against that, they're bad. And we're programmed to say bad is bad, right? So it allows them levers of control, especially when you couple censorship with that on the local level gives them more power exponentially than they should. Where if you had something like the Bolsheviks on a regional and federal level, people on the state and local level would still be able to band together and say, look, this isn't correct. But because of that social justice angle, ideology and just general moral compasses are being spun because no one wants to be called a racist. No one wants to be called a fascist. No one wants to be called anti-American. But it's so easy when you have people who are not only interjecting massive amounts of aggression in your face for a political outcome, but they also, on top of that, throw in the social justice message to get people to turn on a local, state level.
Makes you wonder if this last 6 years, if the Democrats are going to have to account for supporting the actions done by their side protests, if they're going to have to account for that, or I wonder if they're going to start, once Biden gets in there, if they're not going to start showing a strong hand, sending the National Guard into all those cities who have fostered and supported them, like Portland. If after he gets in there, if Portland will request from the governor the National Guard day 2 to come in and quell that. And then if Antifa realize you were used, you were just a tool for them to use.
Well, they'll stop getting funding and it'll just go away.
The thing about Antifa that you have to realize is they hate the Democrats as much as they hate the Republicans.
We all know that, but what's going on is how many votes did Trump possibly lose because people just said, I'm just tired of this, I want this to go away?
I don't think many. And here's why.
I imagine,
while Antifa is an organization for violence, they are almost controlled on a military-like level by Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter, along with a couple other organizations like Unicorn Riot, is their internet arm. They're the ones that go and dox you and censor you and stuff like that if you don't agree with them. But Black Lives Matter is really the political arm of it. So you have to really think of it as three separate entities. There's a cyber entity, there's a physical security entity, and there's a political entity. And the Black Lives Matter people are already going to be in the Biden administration. They're already asking for a seat at the table.
Yeah, I saw
They're
that.
going to get one.
They're making demands.
Yes.
Look and see what we did to get you there. I would laugh if Biden turned his back on them.
Well, he's not, because his chief of staff, or not his chief of staff, I'm sorry, but his campaign manager is intimately involved with Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, it's
So it's really a clever balance on their part to subvert American traditions, American history, and having any sort of pride in a country when they're constantly trying to rip down statues, rewrite history, and make this out to be, a country that was founded on evil, represents evil, and that needs to be fundamentally changed. Now,
the question
if
is where are you going to move to when this comes to fruition?
So that's the thing, right? This whole debacle is really like a globalist dream, right? We're all kind of falling into step. And I don't know if you guys have read or done any research on the Great Reset project, but that seems to be very prevalent. And I think that what we're with...
I think, man, I'll tell you what, right now, if I lived in California, Washington, or Oregon, or any of the states, Virginia north, into probably Wisconsin, I would move. I would leave
I
those.
agree.
I would leave those states. I would be gone. Those states, first of all, have established that. Well, let's call it all the way into Illinois. Those states have shown that they don't care. They don't care about the 10 Amendments. They don't care about any of that. And Trump lost me. I didn't vote. Well, I don't vote. I don't like democracy. And I can catch all the shit I want over it, but look at what it's brought us. It took us from a design of the smallest government that can exist, utilitarian government. And now we're the largest government in world history. How does that
I would argue that's another reason why the system has failed us.
Well,
it is time for armed rebellion. It is time for people to stand up. It's time for people to get comfortable with the fact that violence works. It's the only thing throughout human history that ever solves anything is violence.
well,
Anyone who tells you that otherwise is just trying to sell you something.
First thing first, I would like to try the market. I think I wish I'd have looked into it more, but I'm gonna post out there competitors to Airbnb. Laura Loomer, she got thrown off of what's that stupid food delivery thing, DoorDash, or
Yeah.
She's gotten thrown off of everything.
yeah, but she got thrown off of DoorDash.
I don't even know what DoorDash is.
It's where they drop off Arby's
Like,
at your damn house
Yeah.
for twice the.
Candace Owens been banned from almost everything as well.
Yeah. So here's another question.
Well,
Do
she's
you-
racist.
Well, Candace Owens is actually taking him to lawsuit, and she stands a pretty good chance. But do you have any thoughts on taking this on a legal route?
I haven't really given it much thought because, again, I don't have much standing, right? Because as a company, they don't have to honor my First Amendment rights.
But
like you said, it's
they
a
made
free
a-
market system right now.
They made a
And I
claim
have
against you. They
Yeah.
made a claim against you. They said you were hate speech.
You're a hate speaker, bro.
So I don't know. Maybe it's time to talk to lawyers. See if any lawyers wants to get their name in the fucking papers.
That could be.
I mean, that's a pretty big deal. But this is something that's been going on for a while. It started out, the cavalcade started with Alex Jones. It went, and it just kept moving down, moving along, and they keep bumping people out. They find any excuse. And I think the idea, or if I look at it from their side, I think that they see the world and the definitions totally different, the people on the left. And granted, I mean, it's our age group that sent him to school, and that's where they learn this dog shit ideology, this view and whatever. And it's broken. I don't know. It's broken their minds, and then they go out and they propagate that mind breaking on down. It's like you look at whoever the CEO for Airbnb is. Do you think he even knows that this is going on, or do you think that maybe he's hired people that are 2 years out of Harvard, Yale, MIT, whatever?
Well, these people
they're the
reside
ones
in
doing
California, right? I mean, these
we don't know.
companies.
Not all of them.
Okay, but probably
They're
a majority
everywhere.
of them.
What? Maybe.
And when your admin is like renting an apartment in California, chances are he's exposed to all this crazy.
This company could be here in Utah. There's a huge number in Utah. Texas is exploding with business because those tech companies are starting to leave California, and their employees are too. They're starting to work from home. But the thing is he went to college, and the long march through the institutions is done. It's there.
So that's why I have this fear that these institutional checks and balances that we've normally had, none of them seem to be working anymore. They seem to be weaponized against a certain ideology for a certain ideology.
Well, and
I think that should scare everybody.
It's that all these checks and balances aren't being enforced. They're enforced on one side.
Yeah, selectively enforced.
Yeah, they're very selectively enforced.
So what's the way around that?
Well, how do you get the government to enforce its laws on that 230? How do you get them to do that?
So
because it would take imagine all of these politicians who want to stay in their next, in 2 more years, whoever's up then, and whoever's up in 4 years, and whoever's up in 6, right? All of them. You're going to go to them and say, we want you to go after these tech companies, Twitter, Facebook, and they're like, that is my avenue to advertise. So the ones up in 2 years aren't going to touch it. Not a chance in hell. So if we don't have
free and fair elections, then none of that's going to matter. The model.
Hey, I agree. I agree.
The model
I agree. But our politicians, their only thoughts in their, I'll bet the largest thought in every and this is Republican, Democrat, the largest thoughts in all their minds are, how do I stay here?
And I think that we're seeing that with the consolidations of all these big techs, big companies. This is the last bastion. Having a fair and free election, that's the last line in the sand. If they control, the narrative and the news media, they can censor you on all these platforms.
And they're controlled.
It doesn't matter how you run. It doesn't matter what you run for.
What politician can lose Twitter right now?
What do you mean by lose Twitter?
Be kicked off on it? None of them. And that's why they're all for it.
What can afford not to lose, not to be on Twitter or not to be on Facebook, not to get their message out?
None of these people are going to self-regulate. They're not going to shoot themselves in the foot. Just like they're not going to give term limits to themselves.
They can't chance getting kicked off.
Investigate themselves. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, they can't take the chance of getting kicked off because they lose their election.
But here's the thing. What I like to use as an example, I was a lifelong Democrat. Now I consider myself an independent. What I like to use an example is Clinton and Bush. All right? In public, fierce rivals. In private, they're the closest family friends.
What about
They spend Christmases together.
what about W and Michelle?
Same thing.
Yeah,
Same
those
thing.
two. I mean, I'm not saying anything, but I imagine if there isn't a little bit of romantic entanglement between W and Michelle.
But you got people like Mitch McConnell, people like Lindsey Graham, all these supposed Republicans, stewards. They are having dinner with Chuck Schumer. They're
Well,
hanging out with
yeah,
Nancy Pelosi. They're all friends.
that's where everyone says they think Trump's going to win it by what is it, December 15th? I don't think so because I think the Republicans are gonna fight that all the way. The Republicans don't want Trump, and
No.
I don't. Me honestly, I know Dave's a Trump supporter. Me, I don't care. I'm Trump. When Trump did that bump stock ban and the things he said about red flag laws, he lost me. He lost me that day.
Well, there's
I
more
don't
red flags
necessarily
laws
disagree
coming.
with you.
What's that?
I don't disagree with you with the bump stock bans and the red flag
Yeah.
laws. I think they're
When he thinks that he
unconstitutional.
can support breaking the Bill of Rights from that goddamn desk, me personally, I think our best option right now for survival is to eliminate the office of the president. That's my best thought. Or even say we can have kind of two presidents, or like Rome did, have
Split in two.
yeah, split it. Have them both manage it, and
And I have seen some models where America becomes balkanized, right? There's states that are red, states that are blue. They form their own countries or conglomerates, and they break off from each other. But that in itself even runs its own perils, right? How would China react? How would Europe react? How would some of our rivals react?
I don't worry about anyone invading us. I think
I don't think they need to.
ideally the way to do it, well, I mean, let's face it, California will become, Chinese Far East, I guess they would call it. China across the Pacific. California would sell out to them in a heartbeat. Oregon and Portland, I imagine they would probably try to become a part of Canada, and then they would find Canada too conservative for them, and Canada can deal with that heartache. I think we'd take a slice out of the middle. Our capital would probably be located in Denver. Phoenix is too hot to send a whole bunch of shit bricks in suits down there, but Denver's probably the ideal place.
They'd all get stoned.
We'd have to see where Texas goes and how Texas manages it. That'd be another strong bulwark. But would it be a call to arms like it was in 1865?
I believe so. I think that we're at a point right now where political parties don't matter.
Yeah, and
And
that's
the reason why Trump is popular is because the only people he has behind him are Americans.
well, he was a populist president, just like Bernie was. The Democrats keep forgetting that, but they don't want Bernie because Bernie's a populist president that would undo their
Honestly, they screwed Bernie twice.
their corporate warmonger. Oh, I love what they did to Bernie this year. They didn't even have to outright throw him out. They just said everyone drop out but Sanders but Warren. Warren split the Bernie vote, and everyone else who was strictly Democrat went to
Biden.
Biden.
If you're familiar with the wargaming that Ron Emanuel did earlier this year, that followed that pattern precisely.
Well, I'm sure it did. Rahm Emanuel, I mean, as much as a crooked bastard as he is, he's a goddamn genius.
He is very good at politics.
He sees he's very strategic in his thinking. He sees avenues of attack.
Did you know that the only variant that they could not quantify was the reaction for Patriots?
Well, yeah, what they try to do is they try to button up cities, so they let Antifa run amok in cities, which bolsters just in the inner cities too. You notice how they kind of stopped him from going out into the suburbs too much, except in Portland. In Portland, they let him play games. And I think that's because they wanted to make people afraid of Trump being in again, because this is what you're going to get forever if Trump's in more.
That's kind of accurate. I have a lot of experience dealing with Antifa, and a majority of the reason why they stick to the inner city is just that's their place. That's what they know. That's where they congregate. That's where they're comfortable. So they have numbers.
It could be, yeah. But when they went into what was it? That northern town in Colorado, Fort starts with the C.
So when they start taking bus trips out into
But
the stretches.
Antifa, like
well, when they start leaving, they start getting their ass kicked.
Well, the Antifa guys that Kyle Rittenhouse, God bless his name, that Kyle Rittenhouse shot, none of them were from that city. None
Peace
of them
be
were
upon
from
him.
Yeah.
No,
None
they
of
were
them,
sex offenders from Chicago.
yeah, they were from Chicago, and one of them, the closest one, was 2 hours away in another city in Wisconsin.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
they were there to
busting
agitate.
those.
They're brought in. They're brought into places, and I'm sure they've been brought in here to Salt Lake City. They're obviously not going to come out here to Tooele, but that's why I asked, where are you going to move to? You know, what? Let me ask this: what steps do you have to take to conceal carry a weapon in New York?
They're monumental.
How much Cuomo dick has to be on your breath before you can conceal carry in New York?
The whole way.
Yeah, all of it. You got to have public hair all up in your teeth.
Definitely
So we
not
have
just
the
the
SAFE
tip.
Act here in New York,
Uh-huh.
and that prevents all sorts of common sense and logic. It actually renders firearms unsafe to use. So it's
sure.
safe by the government standards, but it's actually not safe by just a firearm standard for your family, yourself. The modifications that you're forced to make the weapon system unsafe.
What about storage in your house? Say to defend
So,
your home.
interestingly enough, if you store the weapon in your house and your house is broken into in New York and they steal the weapon and you call the police and you say, my house got broken into and my weapon got stolen, you will be brought up on felony weapons charges because you let your weapon get stolen.
Good God.
That's how insane the SAFE Act is.
Now the SAFE Act was passed pretty much like overnight on a holiday during a blue moon.
It was passed in the dead of night. Yep, there was no arguments.
Like the Federal Reserve Act.
Yeah.
December 23rd, let's put a new law out when everyone's home celebrating Christmas.
Did anyone in New York rebel against the Lord? Did anyone take up arms against them?
Lots of lawsuits came about, but there's no appetite through liberal lawyers to take up and liberal judges to take up these cases.
Mm-hmm.
No one seems to want to take up these Second Amendment cases at all, and that's a big problem. But you have to realize too that when the SAFE Act was passed, I believe in 2012 or 2013, the only lawsuit that was successful was, I believe, in 2017, where they found that the 7-round limit was unconstitutional, so they upped it to a 10-round limit.
Yeah, because most firearms,
so that
you could own a 1911 and a Browning high power. That's the only weapons you could own.
So it's my understanding that because of some other technicalities, they raised it to avoid to pretty much throw that lawsuit out, right? So they're like, whatever, we'll just add 3 more rounds. The lawsuit gets thrown out, blah, blah, blah. It's a win-win. But then that year, they also passed more restrictions on the SAFE Act, and they passed more restrictions in 2018 as well. So in normal times, I think that people would seek a remedy through the court system. But I think that in the times that we're in right now, especially with Biden's incoming administration talking about signing an executive order for mandatory gun confiscation and buyback across the entire U.S. I think that people really have to take a hard look in the mirror and say, what kind of country do I want to live in, and what am I willing to fight for?
I think the
one goes
question
down.
the question, if he does a mandatory gun buyback, is what states will step in and impose the 10th Amendment.
I'm sure Mitt Romney will save us.
Well, the executive order is on Biden's webpage, I believe.
He can put it up, but all the states have to say, we're going to impose the 10th. And then the sheriff can deputize the whole goddamn county, and the county can be standing there armed and say, well, I guess your federal officers aren't enough. Maybe this time you got to send in the military, and we'll see what it looks like then.
True. And maybe that's the line that they cross that gets people to wake up and say, look, we have to fight for our freedoms. I don't know. But the problem is what if this scenario happens? What if they do sign an executive order, right? And you don't even know about it.
Oh,
the media doesn't report it. Big tech censors it.
That's what'll happen. That's where you better. I mean, this is a call to people. You better know your community.
Right, but
know the people around you, because the reason you know your community is because if one of them gets raided in the night, the rest of the community can gear up and be ready.
Absolutely. But at that point, typically, you're on a defensive footing, and you're already kind of fucked.
Yeah, he's right.
This warfare, we're going to be on a defensive footing anyway. There's
Not
no
really.
way around it.
Not really.
One, I don't think you're going to get conservatives to storm the White House or to storm military bases and
That's not what they need to do.
put soldiers in harm's way. It's going to be defensive war. But my big question is where are you moving to? I mean, how hard was it to drive that for sale stake into the ground out in front of your house?
So, I mean, honestly, there's not going to be a place that you can move to if they allow you to move.
That's what I'm saying. Why are you moving to now? Because now's when you can.
I don't know that there's a place that's stable enough to go to. I mean, I think that there's a couple red states I would assume that would slow the spread.
Well, just imagine this.
Speed bump.
Like right now, Texas is still red. Texas is pro-firearms. Just Texas alone has the largest military base in the world. And Texas has more National Guard than active military there. So just Texas alone, this is not including any of the other red states. If Texas was to stamp down and lock down just Fort Hood, that takes away, 25% of the U.S. military overnight, or 20%, something like that. It's huge. Just one base.
How far away is Texas from going blue? It can't be that far.
Texas was quite far away from going blue this year.
Was it?
Oh, yeah.
I
Arizona
don't think
went
Texas
blue.
is going to be blue anytime soon.
I don't know, man. I mean, Ronald Reagan turned all of California blue, right? Wasn't that him who pretty much provided amnesty to tons of people who were willing to support Democrat politicians and give them 55 electoral votes? Now, think about a Biden administration for 8 years.
Well, Reagan turned California red when it had been blue for, 2 terms before that?
See, I'm under the impression that Reagan gave amnesty.
Reagan, but when it went blue, when it voted for Reagan.
It was, I believe it was Reagan's second term where he made a deal with the Democrats and the Republicans to say, look, these are the immigration policies I want, what's on the table.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe he gave amnesty to 12 million people.
Up until Trump, the Republican Party was the most pro-immigration party. Remember George Bush?
Absolutely.
The Republican Party was the pro-immigration party. And Sanders and the Democrats came out and said this is horrible. Obama ran on anti-immigration.
So Joe Biden's already stated that he's going to open up the borders.
Hey,
All
you
right,
know,
that's going to be an XO, whatever. But if you look at the Hispanic vote this year, and you kind of delve deep into that, Hispanics don't want open borders.
no,
They
and
know where they're coming from. They don't want to turn that into this place.
yeah, Trump actually turned a lot of Hispanic voters towards his side, and he turned a few African American voters towards his side. Now, of course, the Cubans have historically been Republican Party supporters, but he turned quite a few Chileans and Mexicans in that. But Cuba and Venezuela, most of them when they come up here, they tend to support the Republican Party because they see what the Democrats do. They live through it. The Venezuelans recognize the moves that Chavez made 20 years ago.
I would say, like, okay, maybe the first generations, but second generation
that's a good
Venezuelan family members.
But that's because those first generations work hard and then send them little sons of bitches to college. So it isn't their ethnicity that changes them; it's our education system.
Well, I will tell you this: if you open the borders in Texas, they will try to concentrate on turning that state blue.
Oh, they've been talking about it forever. They've been talking about that for 20 years.
And if you look at the trend, I think they're being successful.
I don't know. Remains to be seen. Texas has a spirit. Still got a Republican governor. Their state is a majority red state, and also their state in national elections remains red. But that doesn't mean they can't change. California was red for a long time, and then it went blue, and then it bumped back into red for a minute to put Arnold in there, and then went back to blue.
Yeah. Imagine if you could cut California in half, and those went towards the red party.
Well, keep an eye on that petition in Oregon.
Is Oregon looking at trying to break itself in half as well?
Yeah, 3/4 of Oregon's looking to leave.
I know you got the Jefferson project in California. Makes you wonder what Oregon would look like. Well, and Oregon, they should, I think we're moving towards a place where most of our commerce, most of our ingenuity is done online. I don't see why geographics needs to control what population you belong to.
I think it's just tradition. It always has.
It's time to shake it up. But yeah, balkanization. So, where would you move to?
I would move to, if I had a choice, either Arkansas or one of the Dakotas.
Nice. I would, if I was you, I would lean towards Arkansas because it's wintertime right now, and neither of the Dakotas sound very comfortable to me right now.
Well, winter makes it uncomfortable for weak people.
Yeah, winter makes it uncomfortable for me, for damn sure. And I got to work out in that shit every day. Had my fill of that shit. I'm eyeballing Flagstaff thinking, man, that'd be kind of nice. And the deer hunting there is good.
Absolutely. Anywhere where there's really solid gun laws.
Yeah, Utah's been pretty good on gun laws.
Yes, they have.
Utah's been...
Isn't Utah going to flip?
No.
Not anytime soon.
No, they're not. We had one Democrat for, 2 years? 4 years? Then he was out. Yeah, Utah's not going to flip anytime soon. We got realistically one city center that's blue. That's it. The whole state.
It is our
So
biggest
you
city
get a lot
center.
of refugees from California?
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
Oh, God, yeah.
They're flooding in, but not near to the level that Idaho's eating. Idaho's eating a bag of shit with California right now. Boise may as well just, hang a picture of a bear on the wall right now.
Wow.
A blue bear.
Yeah. Because No, Utah is, especially where we're located. Yeah. Yeah, the Democrats are lucky if they can get any kind of foothold out here at all. Any at all. And even the Salt Lake City, they run their Democrat out there. The Democrat senator McAdams, he's out this year.
Got to give them credit, though. They are trying. I mean, they don't stop.
Yeah. But, yeah, Utah is yeah, Utah's been very friendly. Now our governor, I think he likes to look at Newsom and say, "Man, I would love to have that power," but he's kind of neutered by the state and the geographics of the state. But you know, he would love to be able to. I mean, he tried putting out a mask mandate the other day, and it's ignored.
Well, gentlemen, I really appreciate you having me on.
We got to cut you loose. It's been
time.
It's been an hour and a quarter. But yeah, anyways, thanks for coming on. I think we need to look for alternatives. I think that's our step. Sad to say, in the current direction, civil war is inevitable, but I would like to see us, for now, try to find market ideas for this. So,
and I agree totally. Find alternates for, go to Gab, go to Parlor, go to alternates besides Airbnb. Anyone that discriminates against your point of view or your rights, vote with your dollars while you still can.
Yeah, yep. and especially on these marketplace ones, if you start seeing something mess up like on Airbnb, okay, that's time to look for alternatives. Let your friends know. Publicize you're going to this as an alternative to Airbnb, because Airbnb has shown that they don't respect you and your opinions, even as docile as your opinions are. I could see, if you had a funky little mustache under that mask, sure, Airbnb saying we don't want your business, I would probably agree with them. But you're just a normal guy, so that's time to, let your friends know. Advertise where you go to and get the name out. Get the name out of who you've chosen and why you've chosen them. And let Airbnb feel the financial burden of making this decision.
Absolutely.
Let another competitor rise up to where maybe they can have some commercials on television and on YouTube.
We do get what we deserve as a society. So if we don't go somewhere else after being
we deserve
oppressed,
to be free.
Yeah, we do. All right, man. You have a good night. Mr. J again. He kept all incognito because he didn't want. It sounds like you're still involved in some public life there, and I can understand that.
Yep, it would definitely be bad.
Yeah. All right, man.
All right,
well,
brother.
You have a good
Thanks,
night.
Guys.
Good luck with that.
Take care.
Take care, guys.